So, this is the first week of the rest of the NFL season following the NFL draft. Anything exciting happened the last few days? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. We're going to talk a little more in depth about the three free agent signings and I'm going to take a look at how they may affect the roster, which is going to be very vague right now, but there are some stuff to talk about there. Again, the three that we signed this week are Justin Herron, Shane Lemieux, both offensive linemen, and Will Harris, a defensive back. And this kind of addresses, give a shout out to Big Cat 4 in the Rumble. Comments had made some comments about Saints needing to, this was right after our draft episode last Sunday, adding offensive linemen and safeties in free agency. So they kind of did. So, good job, Big Cat 4. Maybe Mickey was watching us that night and saw your comments. First one is offensive lineman Justin Herron. He was actually offensive guard drafted out of Wake Forest. The Patriots drafted him in the 6th round of the 2020 draft. For the Patriots, he played both left tackle and right tackle, so showed some versatility in his 4 seasons with the Patriots. And versatility, as we've been talking quite a bit about the last, actually since the league opened in March. Versatility keeps coming up more and more in what the Saints are attempting to do. Over the course of his 4 seasons with the Patriots, he played 35 NFL games and had 11 starts. Shane Lemieux, very similar profile coming in. Also an offensive guard out of college. Went to the University of Oregon, drafted by the Giants in the 5th round. And in his 4 seasons, 18 regular starts, 18 games played, 12 starts, all at left guard. So he was primarily drafted as a guard or interior lineman, because a lot of times you'll see that C/G, center guard designation, and you're about ready to see it again in a minute. 2023, he had 1 start, played in 4 games. Then October, had a bicep injury that knocked him out for the rest of the season. He was basically placed on injured reserve at that point. So it looked like, for better or for worse, the Giants, not exactly a great club over the last couple of years, but he looked like a guy that worked his way into their starting lineup over his last couple of seasons, which it shows some promise. I I'm thinking these are both mostly depth pieces, but again, we'll get into that in just a second. The third one is Will Harris, who another veteran player with some starting experience. He was a third round pick for the Lions in 2019. He in his whole career so far has been with the Lions until this year. He's played both safety and corner. He started 17 games for Detroit in 2021. So he was an every game starter for that whole season. He played last year in 2023, played in 17 games with 2 starts and had a heavy special team role. In his career, it's broken down, or I'm sorry, in 2023 it was broken down. He had about 18% of his snaps were on actual defense and 65% in special teams. So under the new regime in Detroit, because the previous one is the one that had drafted him, he kind of slid off that starting role a little bit, but he became a special teamer. So he still kept some value to the team. In his 81 total games, 40 of them were starts, so he started almost half of them. 14 total pass deflections, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. He's had 290 tackles in his career, 164 of them solo tackles, and 16 of the combined tackles he's had were on special teams, and has 1.5 sacks for his career. So, and it's a lot easier being he's a skilled player for me to give you more statistical analysis on him. So all in all, that's a solid NFL football player. I don't think he was necessarily high up on the potential free agent list of safeties, and I do have to mention that list because one of the things about Will Harris he's mid-20s and a seasoned veteran. He kind of gives you 2 things that the Saints are looking for: some veteran depth, but trying to get younger and stay more athletic, especially in the secondary. And this is by no means the end-all be-all list of top 10 available free agent safeties that I literally have a list on. But just kind of going through the websites, a little bit of potential signings, who's still looking for safety help. If you can jump in the way back machine with me, way back on the very first episode I ever did when I started this channel, talking about bargain hunting and free agency, that there was always a chance there was going to be a bargain in safeties because it was generally thought that safeties had salaries had gone up and there was going to be a reset in the NFL. I guess that's a fancy way to say maybe the organizations got together for a little collusion. I'm not saying it happened, but it's possible. But they got together and said, we got to get these safety salaries down. And a lot of the top guys are, quote unquote, still sitting out there. So these 10 names have pretty much appeared on all of them. So it's not necessarily in order or my order. It's just the most frequent ones. And I'm going to point out from the very beginning that all 10 of these guys, when the season starts, kicks off in September, they're going to be turning 29 if they're not already there or older in the 2023 season. So these are veteran guys and very good players. Some of them you're going to recognize in a minute. But they are, I don't want to say necessarily declining players, but the age of being just basically around 30 would indicate, again, I don't want to necessarily define Honey Badger as a declining player, but he is in this age group also. So they definitely, these 10 and Honey Badger are all in the same category. Still very good football players. But you just don't know how much more they have in the tank or how much longer they're going to be in in the game before they hang up the spikes. So the list: Jamal Adams, Justin Simmons. That's two that frequently I hear a lot of Saints fans and Saints media talking about. Adams is tricky because since Adams has shown up in Seattle, and one of the reasons why they didn't bring him back, when he's on the field, he's incredible. He's had a struggle the last few years to stay on the field, so much so that Seattle was doing stuff like last offseason, paying a ton of money to Julian Love to come over as a free agent, just in case Adams wasn't ready for the start of the season. He did play early in the season and then got injured again. It's just kind of becoming a reoccurring theme with him. Simmons, good solid free safety, but you still have on that list Eddie Jackson, Quandre Diggs, Micah Hyde, Tracy Walker, Marcus May, Jaron Kearse, Adrian Phillips, and Tayshaun Gibson. And the last two are in their mid-30s, or will be by the time the 2024 season kicks off. So I don't know how much further we can go in safety free agency without tripping into one of these names. But at the same time, they're all still there. It looks like the NFL has definitely started to devalue those safety salaries, and good chance these guys may be looking for 1 year prove-it deals. And if it gets to that, I think definitely the Saints would jump in. I think most NFL teams would start throwing some money at those guys that are way less than the salary they've been commanding over the last few years. But getting back to the offensive lineman for a second, this is something I pulled up. Well, I had to create, but the player designations are straight from the NewOrleansSaints.com, the official website, when you go to their roster page. Because I know a lot of you were probably doing the same thing I did when I went through and started getting all these names together. Noticing Eric McCoy, C/G, Cesar Ruiz, C/G, which interior lineman, center guard. And the reality is McCoy's always been a center since he's been with the Saints. Ruiz has always been a guard. When we drafted Ruiz, there was some talk that first season and even into the second season that Ruiz may play center, McCoy may move to guard. First off, I have no idea what this means, if it actually means anything, that some players, they designated an offensive line position, like the first three on Herron, Penning, and Young, all tackles. Hainsworth, center. Hergel, Kramer, and Newell, guards. And then on the other column, you kind of have, gets a little more vague with the center/guards, or just designating Oli Uta, Nick Saldivari, and Mark Evans as offensive linemen, which I guess that's all encompassing of all positions. So I brought it up just in addition to the two players that were added this week, that the offensive line, at least by the Saints' own webpage, when they're designating their rosters, whether it's by design, by accident, typo, I have no idea. But with the upcoming offseason schedule of mini camps and OTAs, there's a possibility there may be a little truth in this. That some of these positions, you may see a swap. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not even going to give a probability other than it's at least 0.1% greater than 0 or higher that you could see a McCoy Ruiz switch in the interior of the offensive line. So I discount nothing at this point. And the other thing you probably noticed, so I have two names in blue, and that's our two draft picks who technically aren't on the roster yet, even though we drafted them. They're not signed, so they're not included on the page. So I'm just guessing, since they were both tackles in college, that'll be the designation we're going to assume. Starting off, next week, because next weekend, because they'll both be in rookie camp. But who knows? And especially, let's say the buzzword one more time: versatility. Fuaga, as listening to everybody involved with the draft, he's about as versatile as they come of the linemen that were draft eligible and taken in the first round. And the only other thing is Ryan Ramczyk. I hate doing this. I really do, because I'm pulling hard for him to recover. And not only as a Saints fan and, wanting our awesome right tackle back, but also just as a personal to the human being, because in the prime of his career to have the problems that are leaving his career in a total question mark. Not only the 2024 season, but any chance to play after that being a question mark. But for this purposes, I had to, even though he has no designation of injury, IR, hurt, anything on the Saints website, on their roster page, I felt like kind of obligated to show that right now, as it sucks to say this out loud, but it's the truth. The Saints organization can't count on him being able to contribute on the field in 2023. If he does get to that point, fantastic. It's very easy to adjust colors and put him where he needs to go and figure out what you're going to do. So, but right now, I just don't feel like you can say that. And since they added Will Harris this week, and you kind of see the same thing going on here, because again, this comes straight from the Saints webpage with their designations. Matthew and Abram, safeties, yeah, we know that. Amadi, designated as a safety. Bradford and Johnson. Then the corners, Adebo, Lattimore, Taylor, and Rico Patton. JT Gray's always been kind of a special teamer for the Saints. I think we've seen him kind of through attrition in some games where we've had some guys go down where he was taking snaps on the defense, but it's not been a very normal thing. But he's our best special teamer, so you kind of throw the defensive back designation on him. Will Harris gets that, and he's kind of similar. And you have Hicks. Howden is the one that surprises me that they're just not putting him in the safety category. And then Jane Charles and Wright also with that defensive back designation. And again, I don't know if this means anything, but it's just peculiar to me that at yet another position, they're clearly defining the difference between safeties and cornerbacks, and then they're lumping another group with kind of a mixed designation. One thing I'll say about Will Harris, with his 81 games of experience playing both corner and safety, a lot of games, I'm wondering if depending how the cornerback situation shakes out, if especially where it comes to Lattimore, if he's going to be on the team in 2023 or if he's going to be traded sometime between roughly June 2nd and a date in August before he gets a guaranteed roster bonus. Harris might be considering if Taylor's got to go outside. Harris may be in that slot corner conversation. Also on this list, I don't have our second round pick, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Same thing. He's going to be there. And his designation is probably also going to depend on what happens with Lattimore and if the slot corner position comes up, et cetera. There's a lot of dominoes that could fall here once the Lattimore decision is made. But I just found it interesting. Will Harris just brought in, let's call him a defensive back, and we're going to figure out what we can do with him later, which is fine because he's the type of player I think kind of fits that mold for the most part of where do we need him most, where can he help us the best. And there's one more position group that I think we need to kind of talk about on the roster a little bit that revolves around a free agent signing that I'm going to start pounding the table soon for, that I feel like they really need to make, since it wasn't addressed in the draft. Fortunately, the guys that kind of would have fit the bill, so to speak, that would have helped us in the draft, just kind of fell in the fourth round. Kind of fell all in a bunch in the fourth round to teams who were also wide zone scheme based. So it is what it is, but I think at running back, the importance of the running back position in the zone scheme, we've talked about this in past episodes, so just a quick refresher. It is extremely important in the zone scheme, especially a wide zone scheme, especially if we're going to use, with so many of these, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak coaching staff that's all been, as they say, the coaching tree, all been through it, how important the running game is to open up play action pass, because that's really kind of that version of the zone scheme it is designed to do, and the running back is hugely, hugely important. It's one of the most important positions, oddly enough, at times may be equal to or more important than the offensive lineman in the run game. And I know that sounds weird, but it's really not when you break it down, because they have to. This is non-negotiable for a running back in this scheme. If this is indeed what they're trying to do, is get to their landmark. Quick refresher: landmark typically for an outside zone run is some portion of the tight end, either up his backside, off his outside hip, up his inside hip, which means they have to have the ball and in position once they reach their landmark. And they have to be patient while being explosive. But let's go through the rules. They have to be patient because the patience comes in. They have to recognize where the space is and be ready to make the one cut, put that foot in the ground, make the one cut, then explode. So it's like patient, cut, explode, get upfield as fast as you can at that point. There's no dilly-dallying, there's no dancing, there's none of that. There is, in the zone scheme, just as an offshoot example, the offensive line is supposed to create the space, and when they don't, typically the running back has to improvise, whether it be breaking a tackle, sometimes in the backfield, unfortunately, but breaking the tackle, making the first guy miss, whatever combination thereof. You can't really have the mentality in the zone scheme, because you have to recognize where the quote unquote hole is, the space is, and then have the physical ability to be patient, wait for it to open, recognize it, one cut, explode, get up the field. So Alvin and Kendry Miller probably are going to be more than likely okay in that regard. After that, I start getting question marks, and there's a lot of names on this list. And I included the fullbacks just because not quite the same, but since Kyle Juszczyk is used in the running game, albeit not often, but when he is, very effectively by San Francisco, you kind of have to include the fullbacks. As I said in a previous video, we get to say this year, man, we're going to have a fullback battle in camp. Cabaldi, Mims, younger guys, they may be fine. They may be the type of running backs. We just don't know. We haven't seen them in the NFL running the ball, much less in the new scheme. My two concerns are the last two, Robinson and Williams. They're both older backs. They're veteran backs. They're experienced backs. Robinson may be able. We may be okay there, but he's knocked around a couple teams in the NFL. He did have a couple of decent seasons in Jacksonville when they weren't very good, but that was a couple of years ago when he was younger. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. Jamal Williams, I don't know if he's a scheme fit necessarily good or bad. I just feel like that last year that he had in Detroit, where they basically used him as a human battering ram to score touchdowns and pick up short yardage. I mean, he had 17 touchdowns that year. He's also an older back, 28-ish, somewhere in there, 29, with a lot of wear and tear on his tires because he played in Green Bay before he showed up in Detroit. And he's on his third team. He did not look especially great last year for the Saints. That's not really an accurate, good barometer because honestly, nobody looked real good for the Saints in the running game. Whether you're talking running back, offensive lineman, or just no one, was it was not good. But I feel like there's some veteran running backs out there that would be good scheme fits that you could bring in and shore up that back end somewhat. But there's one I have in mind, and he's on the thumbnail, that I really, this is my pound of the table, is you have to go kick the tires on Jerrick McKinnon. You have to go, and maybe they have, and we haven't heard anything on it, but I really feel like he's a guy that if you could just bring in, even if it's just for 1 year, it would help immensely in depth, in playmaking, in helping younger backs figure out what's going on in the zone scheme. Because, I mean, Jerrick McKinnon would really be a sneaky good addition to this depth chart. Yes, he's 32. He's been in the league 10 years. But what you have to realize in that 10 years, he's never really had, I don't even know if you could call if he had one season where he was the primary guy. He has had some big seasons with a lot of touches, but he hasn't stacked up a whole bunch of them back to back to back to back. He especially hasn't done it lately with Kansas City. He's always kind of been a highly productive guy with a limited amount of touches, and he can do it in the running game and the passing game. I don't want to call him Alvin Kamara light because I think at the height of Jerrick McKinnon's career, when he was kind of where Alvin's been the last few years, where he's really at his peak level, and I keep Alvin in that category because I think our play caller, our scheme, and our offensive line the last few years did him no favors. And unfortunately, Alvin is where McKinnon has found himself now, which is the backside of the bell curve. But McKinnon, much like Mario Davis, technically, DeMario Davis being on the backside of the bell curve, hasn't off the cliff. It hadn't been steep. It's been very gradual. And the thing is, Kansas City, in some games over the last couple of years, you're talking about a guy that may have gotten only 5 or 6 touches a game. But they could be just so critical, such a big play, whether he was running the ball, whether he was catching it. Trying to remember, it was in 2023, 2022, 2021, one of those years. See him on the field with Mahomes. I think he only had 3 touches all game long. He ran for like 15 yards on a first down and caught 2 touchdown passes in the red zone. It was like it. He touched the ball 3 times, picked up a first down, scored 2 touchdowns. It's like he's that guy. He's always been that guy, and that's how Andy Reid used him the last few years, and I think that would be a great addition to this team. But when you look at definitely his history and where he's played, he started Minnesota in 2014, played there through 2017. He's familiar with Clint Kubiak because Clint Kubiak's first go-around in Minnesota ended in 2014 before he took another job and then eventually found his way back to Minnesota. McKinnon left there, went to Frisco, Kyle Shanahan 2018 to 2020. And while he was there, so was John Benton, our offensive line coach. Again, familiar relationship brewing there. Then 2020 to 2023, just went to Kansas City, played in some Super Bowls, won a couple. And Andy Reid at that point, I think extended his career so much because, as I mentioned earlier, he used him as a weapon, but on a limited snaps and touch basis for the most part. There were some games when he had a lot, but again, they didn't stack up multi 15, 20 touches. I don't know if he's ever had a 20-touch game in Kansas City at all, but the usage hasn't been heavy in that time. And Andy Reid, And this goes back to what Clint Kubiak's going to have to do in this scheme. Scheme it up good. Or, well, I'm sorry, my ex-English teachers, I'm not sure which word I was supposed to say there. But either way, scheme's got to be good, and the play calling has to be good. And Andy Reid proved you can take a 30-plus-year-old running back, which a lot of people would have discounted, who still has explosive playmaking ability, and go, you know what? 5 times a game, I'm going to make the defense poop their pants when this guy's on the field. He's still available. Now, in all honesty, the situation just could be that Kansas City was giving him the, hey, go test the market thing, and if it doesn't work out, we'll always bring you back, because I'm sure they'd be happy to bring him back one more year. I don't really know the situation there, but I think it's worth a conversation. Maybe even jumping on a plane where I don't know where he lives and where he's at right now, but maybe even jumping on a plane and go and talk to him face to face and go, man, look what we're trying to do in New Orleans. Would you be interested in coming in? Probably a 1-year deal, and you'd probably have to pay him a little bit, but I think, look, he's on the thumbnail. That's how much I believe in him. We need to make a serious run at McKinnon. Failing McKinnon, my second choice would be McKinnon Light, I guess you would call him, but Matt Breida, who profiles very similar to McKinnon because he made some plays. I don't know ever really on the level of McKinnon, but I know he had a couple of good years in Frisco. And his years in Frisco were 2017 to 2020, so he had a little bit of overlap with John Benton, with Jerrick McKinnon, who we were just talking about, in the Shanahan system. Since then, I know the Giants had him. I don't know where else he's been. He's kind of been a little bit of a journeyman running back. But even in his time in Frisco, obviously he was there with McKinnon. I think he was a little more of a primary back, or it was more of a split backfield with those two, because I do remember games where they were both getting a lot of touches. But again, he's not a guy that's pounded the rock 350 times a year and caught it for another 90 or anything, like nowhere near that. Since he hasn't, and the reason why I bring up the Giants, I know he was sitting there behind Saquon Barkley, and again, the Giants weren't very good, and it took somebody like Saquon Barkley with his insane athletic ability and running style to be able to run the ball behind that not very good team. So I don't know what Breida has left in the tank. I don't know physically. I don't know his status. I don't know anything. But just kind of running through the names, going, again, kick the tires if he's physically able, if he still has that playmate. He's been in this similar type scheme before. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball. He's a veteran guy. Probably slide in there, and I think I'd feel, as long as physically he was good, I'd probably feel better with him on the back end of this depth chart than James Robinson or Jamal Williams. But the only other name I could maybe shoehorn into this, before you kind of in the range of don't know how much he would really help compared to trying to give the young guys a chance or seeing if Robinson can prove it, that he can do it. Maybe Cam Akers, if you're in a mood for trying a reclamation project. Cam was a second-round pick, 2020, by the Rams. So another zone scheme is where he started. But it was the Sean McVay version, a little different, but still, I think more than enough similarities where he would be able to come in and go, yeah, I got this. I can pick it up pretty quick. Finished last year in Minnesota. He's a free agent right now. Feel like he could possibly, maybe you give him a shot, but I don't know everything that went on why the Raiders kind of, the Rams just kind of gave up on him. Part of it was Kyron Williams playing really well last year in Akers' absence. I think Akers was a little maybe not responding well to that. Akers kind of found himself in that situation where he could be challenged because he did deal with some injuries early in his career, which for a running back can be just a career killer before it ever gets started. And unfortunately, he fell into that category. So he's always been a lot of promise, potential, and expectations type guy that the Rams just had to move on from. And they, again, Kyron Williams just had an incredibly great year for him last year. And I think actually when he showed up in Minnesota, because Ty Chandler, a rookie, kind of finished out their season as their primary guy. I think Akers may have gotten hurt again in Minnesota. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he didn't. I don't even think he played against the Saints when we played Minnesota. Can't remember him being on the field, but I don't remember him at the end of the year. Probably should have looked this up, but it was just while I was going through the name, I saw it and popped in my head and go, well, that might be worth a long shot if you get him in and he is healthy and whatever's going on. But I'd really McKinnon, Breida's a consolation prize, but McKinnon, I really hope they make some type of real effort to see what they could do with McKinnon. And there's a couple more points want to go over with you um, before we call it a night. First, just a little housekeeping on this one. Also, this week, the Saints declined a fifth-year option on former first-round draft pick Payton Turner, defensive lineman. He's oft injured. Haven't really seen a whole lot from him in his career so far with the Saints. Hopefully he shows up this year. Just because they didn't pick up the fifth-year option doesn't mean that he can't have a great year and they decide to bring him back with some type of extension or whatever. But normally when a team doesn't pick up the fifth year on a first-round pick, not a particularly good sign for your future for the team from then on out. So um, I think Payton needs to get healthy. Payton Turner needs to get healthy and on the field. And part of what I am about to talk about, if you notice on the bottom of the screen, scrolling the Saints offseason schedule, and do want to spend a little time talking about that because um, starting weekend coming up, May 10th through the 12th, that's the rookie mini camp. And there could possibly be some veterans that show up basically looking for an audition. It does happen. Uh, Last couple of weeks, every now and then, I see Jarvis Landry was one. Uh, Veterans who don't have a job anywhere, basically, hey, I'll show up at your mini camp if you want to give me an invite, your rookie mini camp if you want to give me an invite to have a workout, and I'll work out with those guys. And it's an effort to try to get one more shot at somebody taking a look at you and bringing you in. It concludes with mandatory team minicamp, June 11th through the 13th. And in between there's 3 OTAs, which are organized team activities. Uh, May 21st through the 23rd, May 28th through the 30th, and then again on June 3rd through 6th. I spent a lot of time talking about this but I think this is it. We need to because it's important this year for just a couple of reasons that uh, have been missing lately. Let's just say in the Saints culture, and culture's a big deal. Remember that. But normally I wouldn't pay attention to this because we've had veteran teams very much through the last few years when it comes to this point in the off season, and when it outside of bringing in the rookies for the mini camp and possibly anybody veterans you may be trying to bring in to give an audition and take a look at. There's not going to be a lot going on here that the team isn't already been exposed to, which would I don't know start I guess is maybe a classic example is over like 2017 to 2020 when Drew was here, Sean was here, there wasn't a huge amount of changes going on necessarily even personnel wise or scheme wise, but there were some. this is one of the places where you kind of address all that. The rookie minicamp, very important because it's kind of the rookie's introduction to the NFL life, and they're going to hit the ground running, or they should hit the ground running. And again, let's go back in history and talk about Marcus Colston, Saints Hall of Fame wide receiver. Um, yes, his rookie minicamp was almost a complete disaster because, and I've heard the story told a couple of times back, and then you don't hear much about it anymore, but it had made the circulation for years about this time of year um, for the Saints because Colston had openly admitted that he was thinking rookie minicamp was going to be more like a little orientation. And no, under Sean, it wasn't a college orientation, it was an NFL orientation. You better have shown up ready, in shape, ready to go, play. They were going to throw information at you. You were going to have to absorb it. You were going to get out on the field, show them that you knew what was going on, what they were talking about. Because it's kind of meetings as well as practice in these type of off season activities. And we've heard from both sides. Colston kind of saying, I thought I was going to get cut from the team right then and there. It was such a horrible experience, and kind of from Sean and some of the organization going, yeah, we thought even though he's a 7th round pick, we thought we made a huge mistake. We zero value, but it worked out in the end, I would think, because between that rookie minicamp and the next OTA, Colston got his head screwed on straight, got in shape, went in there, showed him that attitude that put him in the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame. Was a key part. In fact, I mean, I think you could honestly say no Marcus Colston, no Super Bowl in 2009. So there's a lot of importance here going on. And the reason why I bring up the Colston story, because I think it illustrates something that is kind of, I don't know if it's completely gone from the Saints culture, but something that was fostered from 2006 to 2020, but I think we started losing it even when Sean was here and running the organization. But competition and accountability. I think we've been lacking, especially in accountability the last few years. But I think even the competition, because those teams, those core teams for the Saints, for the most part, from 2006 to 2020, they were competitive with each other. I mean, the stories about them one year for training camp, Sean giving them a surprise day off, and they went to some water park with a giant slide, and they were having a competition off this giant slide who could skim all the way across the pool into the far side into the deck chairs. Now, granted, that's probably not the greatest use of your competitive spirit, and I believe the Saints coaching would shut that down real fast. But that was the mentality. They were going to compete, not necessarily in a way that was bad, but good, the way good competition among teammates, you know, whatever it is, off the field, on the field, translate into that competitive, fierce fighting spirit those teams had. That I know I'm not the only one that has questioned how much of it, where is it, the last couple of years. I want to see it back. I think it starts in this offseason. And accountability goes right next to it. Because Colston definitely was going to be held accountable for, I mean, this, in all honesty, in comparison, in a real world comparison, where what he basically did was in that rookie minicamp that first year, is at any of us went to a new job and basically looked incompetent so much that during the in the job training portion where okay we're gonna teach you how to do the job we need you to do during this phase of your employment, but it's going to be hands on, and in the case of the NFL it's going to be hands on, pads on, whatever. And it was the equivalent at the beginning of that Colson story of your first day at that job and by lunchtime, management's looking at you going, I think we made a mistake, man. We're probably gonna have to get rid of this person before the end of the day. And that's kind of, but the accountability kicked in, and so when he showed up from then on, thankfully for everyone involved, including a Saints fan who was sitting in Miami that when we won that Super Bowl, yeah, the accountability and definitely the competitiveness. Colson has to be a prime example of that. The guy was the third to last pick in the draft, survived the disastrous, really, first 3 days of working for the Saints, and turned himself into one great, arguably the best wide receiver the Saints ever had on the best team. Unarguably, it's the only Super Bowl winner that they've ever had. I think it starts here. I think the coaching staff, the organization, the players, both new and old, all need to start there with that new competitive, not new, rekindle that competitive spirit, but definitely accountability and put it all together. You want to turn this organization around. We can talk about draft picks and resets and fixing the salary cap and all that other stuff. Doesn't mean cover your ears, youngsters. Doesn't mean jack shit if they don't fix the competition and the accountability issues that, unless you're completely blind, has been going on in this organization for far too long. Because having it go on at all is far too long. But this is starting to stack up over the years. And I am paying attention because we looked at the rosters: offensive line, defensive back. There's a lot of fight in there for some guys for playing time. And some of it coming from rookies. And I think that's good. Some of it coming from younger veteran players. I think that's good. I think everybody in those rooms need to be uncomfortable so they can be competitive and they can be accountable. I think this starts off because competition for jobs aren't really, truly going to be meted out until training camp and preseason. But it starts here. I think some people need to understand it starts here. I think there's some job competitions. I dare say it. I'm just publicly been saying since we signed Willie Gay. Willie Gay isn't here to be a backup. In his mind, he's here to win a starting job and play because he wants to play. And I think in the organization's mind, it's hey Pete, you're gonna have to fight for your job. We need to see what we saw your rookie year, first year, as an improvement, not what we've been seeing the last year. To me, that's the organization even creating some competitiveness and some accountability right there, just at that linebacker spot. That needs to go all over this roster while we're rebuilding it and getting younger and more athletic, more versatile. There's that word again. It needs to start. It needs to start May 10th when the rookies show up, a week from today, in fact. And it needs to go as far as the season's going to go for us. Competition, accountability starts 7 days, ladies and gentlemen. So, with that, I'm definitely going to get off my soapbox now. I guess it makes me taller. What can I say? So I like to climb up on it every now and then. But thanks for joining us for really just 1 week after the draft. Uh, I really thought that there wasn't much to cover, but kind of just even cursory um, looking at it, and then kind of getting into a research some of the topics. I realized there's a lot more going on in the last 7 days 6 days than I thought outside the club, and I knew it was going to start to gear up again once all the off-season programs start. So I thought it was going to be dull, but I'm going, it might be exciting. It might definitely be worth paying attention to what's going to happen over about the next month and a half or so. And then there's always still chances some free agents, probably more than likely after June 1st, but you never know. We may still have some more players possibly adding to the roster. And don't know if any of them will be a big splash. But I think at this point, again, going back to competition and creating that old Sean feeling of uncomfortableness because no job's secure. I want to see that again, and I want to see it start in about a week. So outside of that, that's all we got for you tonight. If you notice, I changed the banner on the bottom from the off-season program to my desperate plea for like, share, subscribe, Rumble, hit follow. But all kidding aside, please like, share, subscribe, hit follow. Still trying to get the channel going. Still trying to get fully grow. We'll be live. We'll be recorded, kind of back and forth. But when the season kicks off, I want my level of competition and accountability to be as high as what I'm expecting from the Saints, so we can all have a good season come the fall. So, thank you very much for joining. I'm Tim. Peace out till next time. Who dat?